Hi, I'm Kerry Washington, and you're watching Angie's Book Club.
You know by now that I'm an absolute book fanatic. And my guest is laughing at me already. I don't know what it is. I tend to pick up a book. It's not always the story, it's the author. And it always amazes me that an author will sit down in an assigned position or maybe in different places, and then their writings resonate all over the world. My guest is Kerry Washington. Kerry, welcome to Angie's Book Club.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. We're going to
My
talk
honor.
Thicker Than Water.
Yes, we are.
This is a book that I've been anticipating for a long time because the press release came out some time ago.
I know.
Yeah, and we thought, right, okay, we're going to be hearing about Olivia Pope, but we're not. We're hearing about Kerry Washington. And what I do love about this book is you've made the decision to be very open because generally you're quite a private person.
Yes. Historically, I have been.
Why? And I know media is media, but even on social media, you're very, very strategic with what you share.
Yes, I do. I am strategic because I do share a lot of myself, but there have been lines in the sand about how much of my private life was for me and how much of my private life I was willing to share. But that all changes when you write a memoir.
Yes.
For me, it changed. I guess not everybody approaches this project in the same way, but for me, I felt like this was a moment to be much more transparent and open and honest.
So even though you are a very private person, you've written this memoir and it starts off with a very, very personal moment in your life.
Yes.
This ain't private no more. What really grabbed me was the meeting that your parents asked you to come to have. And then it stops because we don't get the answer to the question. We don't understand what the meeting was about. And then we go back to your childhood. So it's like there are these stepping stones that reverse, but then move forward, if that makes sense.
I know. As I hear you describe it, I think it's cinematic in a way because that's my language, right? That's the world that I come from, is storytelling through imagery, film, and television. And so I am really using this device of the flashback in many ways of kind of setting up the crisis or setting up the inciting incident and then going back even before my childhood to my parents' first date before, when I was a prayer still.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about your mother's first marriage and the unpleasant synergy between her and her first husband. And at that time, to walk away from a marriage, that must have been a very, very strong thing for your mother to do. Because even now, we like to mask it, don't we? We like to fix it. We like to pretend that everything is going okay. But obviously behind closed doors, your mother was like, no, I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing this out in the open either.
Right.
That must have been a very, very proud moment when you got to understand that about your mother. She's obviously a very strong woman.
I think that was the result. That was a big part of what I received. That was part of the gift of writing this book, was getting to know my parents more as people, as complicated people, not just as figures, like the way we kind of make our parents heroes and we put them on pedestals, or maybe we villainize them, but they're not like complicated, vulnerable humans. And I got to know my parents and their journey with so much more complexity and humanity and vulnerability, and to see how strong they've been and how innovative and courageous and, in so many ways they were ahead of their time and willing to take risks that nobody else they knew had taken, all in the name of love. And so even though as we were living it, it may not have always felt like love, it was, all of these choices came from love.
Yeah. You're quite open about your father's drinking.
Yes.
And I got pictures in my mind. It's interesting because when you read, pictures do paint words. And I got pictures in my mind of young Kerry in her bedroom, listening to her parents' heated conversations. I'm not going to say arguments. And I'm just thinking, what coping mechanism did you use to get through that? Because there's one part where you say sometimes you wanted to fall asleep. And, and I'm hearing the little girl that struggled,
Yes.
and also being an only child as well, not being able to share that. That must have been quite a time of growth. Maybe you didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, I think so. I think in some ways there were some, as always happens when we're faced with trauma, particularly as young people, we develop some coping mechanisms that serve us. Well, they all serve us in the beginning, right? They're coping mechanisms. They're how we survive. And then as we get older, we realize some of those things have become our superpowers, and some of them have become the things that limit us into moving forward into adulthood. So that time of my parents' struggle and how it impacted me, it was when I started to have panic attacks, when my anxiety really began to grow. But I also really started to learn to watch for cues and to study people. It developed this hypervigilance in me that has been sometimes problematic in relationships, but has been really extraordinary for me as an actor. I mean, that's part of why I am the kind of actor that I am, is because I look, I listen, I watch for cues, I study people, I look for danger, I look for truth, I seek out these kind of real truths about humanity, because as a young child I was looking for them, I was searching for them, for safety, for humanity, for love, for acceptance, for belonging.
Reading body language, that was something I got very, very strong, that came through for me, especially when you knew your dad was coming home. And it wasn't his body language, you would read your mother's body language first.
And even knowing like the sound of how he put the keys down could tell me.
And hearing his feet walk across the floorboards.
You just know what the dynamics are going to be in the household. Who's had a little too much to drink, who's feeling excited, who's feeling frustrated, who's sad, who's energetic. I could figure out the clues to map my way through the evening.
Interesting.
I know.
And
I think about that little girl, like you said, I just have so much compassion for her and her brain, that she was doing all this problem solving and developing these mechanisms for survival at such a young age.
But how gifted to do that. I mean, I felt that there was a lot, we've probably all been there, where we've had adult issues placed on our childlike shoulders, and we don't have the emotional intelligence to truly deal with those things, but somehow we navigate our way around it, even if that does mean laying in bed at night being scared, thinking, my goodness, I want to fall to sleep, because then you get up in the morning and you just go off to school as if nothing's happened.
That's right. Well, and I think the other thing that so many kids do, and that adults do as well, right, is that we look to complete the story. So when we don't have all the answers for what's going on here, we decide to fill in the blanks. And so often, especially children, decide it must be me. I must be the problem. I must be the solution. Because as kids, we are the only thing we can control. So we think, if I'm better, if I'm more successful, if I'm smarter, if I'm prettier, if I'm thinner, if I'm more of what they need me to be, maybe things will be okay.
You mention that quite a lot. There's one chapter where you mention that quite a lot. If I am, if only I were, which I found quite sad, but I could resonate with it quite a lot. Imagine a child coming home, mum and dad are fine, but then when they get home and the child doesn't know what's going on before they get home, but mum and dad start arguing, you do think it's you. You do think, right, why does this only happen when I'm home? You went through a phase where you just decided, well, look, I ain't going home. I'm going to go off to... And did you not used to ring your dad and say, right, I'm going to one of your friends' houses? And he'd say, right, well, if I ring, no, don't bother ring Dad. And then we've all done it, haven't we?
I guess so, yes. I think there was a period of rebellion, of trying to individuate, which I think also is the job of an adolescent, is to try to figure out who they are as they break away from who their parents are.
And become your own person.
I was desperately trying. I mean, I think that's a lot of what writing the book was about for me, was this exploration of a person really looking for herself. A young girl, and then a young woman, and then a woman really searching for some clarity about who she is and how and why.
Can I touch on the food addiction? Of
course, there's nothing you can't touch on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any addiction is to cover pain. and you do talk quite a lot about different areas of pain that were going on in your life. Why food? Why was food the drug of choice? If that
makes sense.
Makes
That's a
sense.
good question. I can only guess. I don't know for sure, but I think in some ways because I had to maintain this good girl image.
Yeah.
And food is a socially acceptable substance.
Yes, it is.
Everybody uses sugar. Everybody goes into food in moments of emotional need. And so I was hiding the more sort of the uglier, more dangerous, more painful moments and trying to maintain the good girl image. So this kind of crazy abusive behavior with food and exercise, these were things that are so socially acceptable that people would say to me like, oh, it's fine, everybody eats a little ice cream when they're depressed. And that's what it looked like to other people, but behind closed doors it was a whole other level of desperation and depression and anxiety and abuse. And same with the exercise. Everybody was like, of course it's great to go work out when you're not feeling well, but being at the gym for hours and hours and hours without eating is a different
a light bulb
mindset.
comes on there.
It's disordered.
Your time in India.
Yes.
That seemed to center you. But I got the impression that when you were ready to leave, my goodness, you were ready to...
I love that you picked that up.
Oh,
that's so funny. I used to have this running list when I was there of like the things I was going to do when I got back to the States. And it was like, take a hot shower, eat a salad, you know, because you weren't allowed to eat raw vegetables and we had no hot water in the house the whole time I was there, which it wasn't that there was anything wrong with our house in particular. There was no hot water anywhere unless you were at a hotel. So yeah, I loved my time there. And I did look forward to coming back. But when I came back, I missed it tremendously.
Because I got a sense of becoming quite spiritually centered when you were there, through meditation, through yoga, and kind of flipping a lot of habits that maybe you were able to start navigating habits in the States that weren't so good for you. It was able to kind of, if I was to say, semi-flush them away when you got to India?
In some ways, I think I was developing my my recovery and healing practices in the States before I left. But being there really deepened my spiritual center and my relationship with higher power and my recovery and evolution, for sure. I loved my time in India. I was just saying to friends that I can't believe I haven't been back. So it's time for me. I have to. There's also so much of the country I haven't seen. But yeah, it was such a special time. You know, I grew up in a neighborhood in New York where there's like a liquor store on every corner, and you go to India and there's an altar on every corner. It's just a very different way of living, and it's a way of embracing the sacred in everyday life that stayed with me, that really stayed with me. And I think I went there because I knew that the art traditions, the performance traditions were rooted in spirit and in culture. But I didn't expect for my whole life to be rerouted or reinforced in spirit and culture.
As a performing arts student, were there times where you were able to push your childhood down and become someone, become that character, forget that person that was staying alone in the
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had this, I've tried to write about it in the book. When I first fell in love with acting, I think it was because I could escape myself. I would play these characters. I mean, whether it was a toy boat in The Velveteen Rabbit or an orphan in the musical Annie. You know, there's these childish, these child characters, but I was losing myself in a beautiful way to be fully present in the moment of these characters. And I loved that escape. It really saved me in a lot of ways. It gave me a place to escape my mind and to escape the complexity of the different scary details of my life that I was trying to navigate, and to be in joy and to be expressive on stage, to lose myself. I think as I as my relationship with acting evolved, I started to realize that acting was also a place where I was able to reveal myself, but I was revealing my inner truth behind the mask of the character. So it became this place where I was actually able to share myself, to have cathartic experiences, to tell the truth in big ways because I had the cover of a character to speak through.
And now that these characters are out there, is Kerry Washington different now that she's written the memoir and the privacy of your life, where your parents are concerned, the lid is now off?
Yes. I think something very significant changed in my work as an actor when my parents gave me the information about my paternity. When they shared this revelation that I reveal in the book. Should I say it?
Please do. Well, the thing is, we've tried, I'm trying to steer around it, but I think we know now. I think we know now, don't we?
So, and if you don't want to know and you don't know, then you can pause and come back. We'll be here. But so my parents shared with me that my beloved dad is not my biological father, that I was conceived with the help of a sperm donor.
Yeah.
And when they gave me that information, it began a real journey for my family into truth, into a different kind of intimacy, into a different kind of reality with each other. And I think something dramatic changed in my work as an actor at that moment.
Yes.
The work really deepened because I landed into myself. It was like they gave me a key to unlock the confusion that I had been experiencing. I had been spending my whole life looking for myself and having this cognitive dissonance, not really trusting myself. And when they gave me that information, I was able to build a pathway back to myself, my relationship with myself, my relationship with truth. And so the work deepened. I think you can see it in American Sun, and you can see it in Little Fires Everywhere, and you can see it. There's really this, I don't know, there's a more creative courage in a way. And I feel like that has continued now in the course of sharing the book. I don't know how it's going to affect me as an actor because I'm still in the process of really having this big, sharing it with the world, to be able to travel around the country and now around the world, sharing this information and really connecting with people, because my dad said to me the other day, the biggest thing I'm learning with the book being out in the world is that every family has secrets. Everybody has secret places where we're holding on to shame, where we think we're unlovable, or we think we can't be in our truth. And as you watch our family do that hard thing of being in a difficult truth together and sharing it publicly, I think it allows other people to feel more safe about sharing their secrets. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm very curious to see who I'm going to be on the other side of this book tour. I think I'm still so in it.
It was a 5-year period, wasn't it? You found out 5 years.
Between 5 and 6 years ago, yeah.
When you first found out, I can imagine it was a shock, but I got the sense of, that's what it is.
Yes.
That's what I haven't been able to piece together. Yes. That's why I feel like this.
It's a little bit like the Princess and the Pea, at the danger of describing myself as a princess. There was this inability to sleep throughout my life. And suddenly they said, oh, there's this pea under the mattress, and this is why. And you are, in fact, a princess. Go out there and figure out your journey. Go discover who you are. And they didn't so enthusiastically say that in the beginning. That was my inner calling of like, this is a moment for me to step into the story of who I am and really show up for myself. They were like, we've told you this thing, don't tell anybody, right?
And so that kind of confuses me as to why they did tell you. I can imagine it must have been something that was eating them out.
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that they went through their own struggles of, do we do this?
Right.
What is this going to mean for the future of our family? Not just our daughter, but aunts that you talk about and, connections in the Caribbean. What's this going to mean if we let this out now? How are we going to move the family forward? Not just Kerry, the family.
So I've said this before, but I think in some ways what was happening was that in that moment that my parents gave me this information, shared this revelation, I realized that I had spent my whole life being a supporting character in their story.
Yes.
And that with this new information, it was an opportunity for me to step into my story and to figure out what that story was. You know, who am I and why and how? What do I care about? To give myself the same sort of care and dignity that I've given these characters that I've played throughout my career. I mean, I could tell you in a heartbeat who Olivia Pope is, who her parents are, what she wears, what she eats, you know, how she feels, what she wants, what she longs for, what she's afraid of. But I hadn't given myself that same deep dive. And this was my opportunity. I think that's so much of what Thicker Than Water is about for me, is to allow myself to be the protagonist and to figure out who I am and what I want and what do I eat and how and why and what do I wear and how do I walk and who do I love. That's so much for me what this moment is about.
Has the revelation altered your relationship with your husband and your children, or have you grown as a person because of the revelation?
I mean, first of all, this awareness that I deserve to be the protagonist in the story of my life is something that I think every person deserves. I think we all deserve to know that we are at the center of the story of our lives, that we deserve our own hero's journey. And that doesn't mean that I'm done being a supporting character in the story of my parents' life. I still want to be that and do that for them. And I want to be a supporting character in my husband's life and a supporting character in my children's life. But I also want each of them to know that they're the lead characters of their life and I'm the lead character of my life, that we all deserve that. And I think about that a lot now, you know, in parenting and in marriage, that desire to really give of myself, to be of support, but also to hold space, to have my own story and to not lose myself in other people's stories. And I think especially as a woman, as a mom, sometimes we think it has to be all about supporting their story. And it's true. I don't want them to live my story. They should be living their story. And I should be in support of that. But I'm going to help them do that if I live my story. Yeah. That's the power of example. I want my girls, I want my son to know that they deserve to be at the center of their lives because they watched mommy and daddy do that too. And that you can hold space for being a protagonist and still being loving support in the lives of the people that you love.
I love that. Can we talk about your influence in Hollywood? Can we talk about your, you know, there's a lot of names that you mentioned. Growing up in the Bronx, the name Jennifer Lopez comes up quite a lot. Going for auditions, and you know, there are names that come up. Marlon Wayans' name comes up, and you know, and it's really nice to get an image of you guys all coming up together. Yeah. And I just got this impression that the passion behind your craft, the passion behind acting, you always knew you were going to get there. There might have been a few dips, there might have been a few auditions that didn't quite turn out the way that they were planned. There's lots of colorism, there was lots of things going on. But your influence in Hollywood now is very, very strong. It's very, very positive. As a Black woman, you know, coming. Thank you. Absolutely.
I feel really blessed. I know, you know, in particular now when we're in the midst of these actor strikes, I know how lucky I am. Mm-hmm. I know how blessed I am to be able to make a living doing what I love to do. That's not something that a lot of people are able to do right now, which I think is a problem. But I feel really, really blessed, and I don't take it for granted. I really don't.
Do you think your children will follow you in the arts?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think I'm just excited to see, you know, how their path unfolds.
Do you feel that there is a connection now between you and the reader of the book that pre-revelation wouldn't have necessarily been there?
Oh, yes. It's funny, even just with friends of mine in the business, like I did a big book tour event in Los Angeles with Gabrielle Union. Yes. And Gab said to me, I just always felt like there was a distance between us. I always felt like there was something about you that we didn't know. Some way
people are picking this up.
Yes. And I thought, so interesting, because her language is so similar to how I described my relationship with my mother, right? Of like, there was something I didn't know, there was a veil, she was holding me at arm's length. And so I was walking through the world repeating those patterns because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I knew that there was more to me, or I had this inkling, this feeling that there was something about me I couldn't quite connect with. And so it created a distance between me and other people because I wasn't comfortable in my body. I wasn't fully present in my body because I wasn't fully comfortable in my body.
Yeah.
And so that has really changed. And I think that's changed with audiences too. People have been, throughout the years, so supportive of my privacy. People have been really, have at times thanked me for being more private in the way, protecting my children, which I still am in a lot of ways, right? Like just because I've written a memoir, I'm still not posting pictures of my kids on the internet. And, my husband and I have been married for 10 years. I think we just posted our first picture together this summer. But I do think there's a level of authenticity that's different for me. I'm in my body and in my life in a way that's much more open. I've let go of a lot of confusion and shame. Or when it comes up, I know that that's a language or a frequency that belongs to my past and is not my present moment.
So who's Kerry Washington now? Who is she now?
I mean, today she is, I think I am somebody who's very much on my hero's journey. I don't think I've completed it. But I feel like this revelation is a bit of an inciting incident, a call to action, a call to adventure.
Yeah.
And that I'm in a new process of learning about who I am and learning how to be in a new kind of relationship with myself and my past, learning how to be in a new kind of relationship with my present. And there's a lot I still don't know. I still don't have the information about my donor.
Do you want information about the donor? Do you know, it's really interesting because I'm going to assume you were born late 70s, being the age that you are. Sperm donation at that time.
Oh, it was the wild, wild west. It's not like today where you could walk into a clinic and pick their Ivy League degree and the color of their eyes. I mean, my parents had no idea who this man was. They had 2 requests to the doctor: let him be black and let him be healthy. That's all they knew. That's all they knew. So I also, when I think about when we were talking earlier in the interview about my parents' extraordinary courage, they were such innovators. They were renegades to take on this, artificial insemination. Nobody was doing it. They didn't know anybody who'd done it, but they wanted me so badly that they were willing to take this leap. And I'm so grateful. And you know what? I'm also so grateful. Like, I could sit here and we could laugh. I have spent many hours laughing about my dad's kind of resistance to being in this truth. He didn't want to tell people. He doesn't want people to know. Even today, he says, you don't know who the donor is because it might be me. Like, he is so wonderfully attached to the idea that I am his and he is mine. And I am too. I just have also made room for this additional third figure who is the source of some of my biology. That person's not my dad. I have a dad, and I love my dad. But I also have a big question mark around 50% of who I am biologically. And I want that information. I do. But I was going to say, I could sit here and sort of, say, I could call out my dad's resistance to truth or his pride as a character defect. But the reality is that when the doctor said to my parents, you have 2 choices, having examined you both, you have 2 choices. You can either adopt or you can do this newfangled thing called artificial insemination. If it were not for my parents' pride, if it were not for my parents' desire to keep a secret, they would have adopted.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be here.
Absolutely.
So I have those factors of their personality to thank for my very existence. I can't judge them.
You're here.
Yes.
You're here.
Those are my gifts.
They treasured you. They did everything that parents could do. They pushed you. They saw your craft. And we now have Olivia Pope. Yes. And we now have,
and they're with me on this tour. That they've done the radio shows and the talk shows and the photo shoots with me, because even when it's uncomfortable, they're standing by me.
Yes.
And so for me also, what an extraordinary lesson as a mom. I get to witness my parents at this age step into such glorious parenting, to say, like, We may not agree with everything in it. We may not love everything about it, but we love you, we respect you, we're proud of you, and we support you. And I just pray that I'm able to be half that parent to my child.
And
children.
To your children, and that is the essence of the book. It's that whole family connection. Okay, your father's not your biological father, but he's your father.
He's my dad.
Yeah. Okay, you're now going into production and directing, aren't you?
Yes, I'm doing some directing, some producing. Yeah.
If you could pick one character, don't say Olivia, because everyone in this room, you know, we all love Olivia. Look, for me, B in Ray, I just think yourself and Jamie Foxx have got a connection that is, and I'm going to assume that this isn't just, oh, hi, yeah, I'm going to be in a film. I sense a friendship here. Good.
Yes.
Django Unchained.
Yes.
Hey, little fire starter.
Yeah.
And she just, there's some beautiful connections. I was watching For Coloured Girls a few weeks ago, the Tyler Perry film. What's the most standout character for you? And let's bear in mind, Olivia Pope is the first leading black character on TV, on network TV.
Yes.
And there was a span of about, what, 14,
Almost
15
40,
years?
40 years.
40?
There had been 40 years since there was a black woman as the lead of a network.
So that is an achievement.
Yeah.
And so we thank your parents.
Oh, yes, exactly.
What's your standout character?
I can't choose. It's almost like picking a favorite child. You know, every character is so special for me, and they each teach me something about myself. They are my mentors, these characters, because I get to drop into their lives at sometimes the most pivotal time. It's almost like I get reincarnation in this lifetime. I get to learn the lessons that they learn and then weave them back into my life and move forward. So I love them all so, so, so much.
Kerry, what do you want people to take away from this book? We have the knowledge of who you are. We have the knowledge that your father's not your biological father. We have the knowledge that you've been a very, very private person and you've taken this step. What do you want people to take away with this book?
When my parents first told me, as you described it, I did have kind of an exhilaration, like, oh, this is it. Yeah. But looking over at my dad, I also had this realization of how terrifying this was for them.
Yes.
And it occurred to me that every time I had said, I love you to my dad, that in some ways it had been on the condition of this lie. That some part of him, whether it was consciously or unconsciously, must have thought, she loves me because she thinks I am her father. And if she finds out I'm not her father, she may not love me.
So can you imagine the turmoil he was
Yes,
going
for decades,
through?
for decades. And I realized in that moment that, and I said to him, that this was going to be my opportunity to show him what it feels like to be loved unconditionally. Because I wasn't going to go anywhere. I knew that I was still going to be his and he was going to be mine. And I was now going to be able to say, I love you in truth. That he was going to be able to be loved in his truth. And I think that experience helped me realize that I too deserve to be loved in my truth. Yeah. And I guess if there was anything that I wanted people to know, it's that. I think that's why when people read the book, they come up to me and they tell me their family secrets. It's because you realize that there is space to be loved and accepted in truth, and that we are as sick as our secrets. If we can shake off our secrets, we can shake off the shame and get that unconditional love that we deserve. There was an interview, I cannot remember, it could have been Oprah and Chris Rock when he did Good Hair. And he was sharing about the information and the process of straightening hair and wigs, etc., etc. And one of the women stood up and said, you know, you're giving away our secrets. And he said, secrets rot the soul. And if you let go, you are free. That's right.
And you are free indeed. And what I loved about an Instagram post that you recently put up was, because obviously your parents were a little bit apprehensive about all of this, and you put up this Instagram post and you said to your mum and dad, let's read some of the comments. And you could just see the love and the release that was coming through them. And it you know, it wasn't all, oh my goodness, how could you two have done that? Because we're in 2023 now. Come
That's
on.
right. It's funny, you know, in that moment I said to my dad, you're going to get to see what it feels like for me to love you unconditionally. But really what he's experiencing is this global unconditional love. He's getting standing ovations and sold out audiences in New York and DC, and he's appearing as guest stars on talk shows and, you know, People magazine. So he's receiving in his truth a greater love than I think he even imagined. And that, for me, to be able to witness that process for him, to witness that liberation, is such a gift.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thicker than water. Kerry Washington has been my guest on ABC Angie's Book Club. Kerry, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You are more than welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.